Jesus often taught using everyday, familiar examples, like looking for sheep or planting seeds. But for 21st century city dwellers like us, some examples are no longer familiar, like farming or even baking with yeast. Yeah, yeast. Matthew 13:33. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into a large amount of flour until it worked all through the dough. Unless you bake often, you may know yeast, but you don't really know yeast. So let's first look at yeast from a baker's perspective. We're going to do a comparison experiment using dough that has yeast and dough that does not have yeast. These two bowls have the same amount of water, except in this bowl, we're going to add some yeast. And let's put the same amount of flour in each bowl. 1 cup of flour. So while we wait for the yeast to get activated, why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe to Pastor Jason Answers. Alright, let's mix and knead the dough. Alright, so you see, this is the dough with no yeast, and this is the dough with yeast. I'm going to cover it up, and we'll take a look after an hour. Do you see this? This is crazy! After just 90 minutes, the dough with the yeast is double the size of the dough without yeast. What the? This is crazy! Wow! The yeast is actually living and active. It's eating and multiplying throughout the whole dough. Although yeast started with a small presence, now the dough is full of yeast. The yeast has spread all throughout the dough. So you can actually take a piece of this dough and add it to the other batch right here, and the process starts all over again. So the gospel of Jesus Christ starts out very small, and the gospel is so simple, but once it enters the soul, it starts to transform every part of the person. The gospel is not just a small part of someone's belief system, but now the gospel has taken over every part of the Christian. It's not like joining the Boy Scouts or some club or putting on a uniform. The change takes place from within. It's not about making outward behavioral changes. We're talking about true transformation, like yeast. In the same way, although Christianity started off small in Jerusalem, it has grown not just numerically, but it has transformed the societies it has touched all over the world. The kingdom of God expands not just in numbers, but just like yeast, it transforms people, hearts, culture. It's a movement to change the world. In the early centuries, Christians were killed and persecuted, especially by the Romans. But Christianity didn't overcome with guns and tanks, but the gospel was moving, alive and active. like yeast, transforming hearts under the surface. And like out of nowhere, many Romans became Christians, including the Roman emperor. And that's how the kingdom of God continues to spread. Not by force, but like yeast. It starts small, but eventually works its way through the whole dough. This is Pastor Jason signing off.